I'm sure I wasn't the only one who was a little dumbfounded when Sombra's changes were first teased in the trailer for Overwatch 2 rework. There certainly was an ongoing theme of
more potential damage.
The ability to do 50% more damage, it no longer removes all shield, and now it just deals damage to enemies.
okay. Like, I get that Sombra is a damage hero and she's supposed to do damage, but if we were to just take a look at a gun for a second, and don't get me wrong, I think it's a cool looking weapon, but compare this to your railguns and your rocket launchers and your sticky bombs, and is this relative pea shooter really the reason anyone is playing Sombra? It's probably the least satisfying gun to use in the entire damage roster, and if all I wanted to do was do damage and shoot stuff in the backline, then why wouldn't I just play Tracer? Unless Sombra was just blatantly overpowered, which... yeah... didn't go so well. You see, nobody wants to play against a hero who can just pop out of thin air and burst you down as and whenever she likes by herself. And even if you're winning the duel against her, she gets to just teleport out of the place and the whole cycle repeats itself. This is why Sombra has always had low damage, by design. By pushing to make Sombra do more damage while still trying to make her do Sombra things, she just ends up doing neither of those things. So how would I fix Sombra? Sombra has a really distinct hero identity, so instead of completely erasing that in the name of
more potential damage,
why not just embrace Sombra for what she is? She is first and foremost a hacker, and hack is her signature ability. Hacking enemies and disabling their abilities is a key draw to her gameplay loop, and arguably the reason why you would want to pick Sombra in the first place. Which is why I would not be focusing on trying to make Sombra do more potential damage, but instead, elevate hack and its unique qualities in the spotlight while making adjustments to render it as an ability that is worthy of respect. Which was a big problem in Overwatch 1 because getting your abilities locked away behind a full static duration of hack has always felt contrary to that notion, or as some would put it, frustrating and unfair. Do you know what's even more frustrating and unfair? Who in the right mind thought this was a good idea? Like, how are we supposed to stop a hack from an invisible target that doesn't even have to commit to de-stealthing to pull it off? Did anyone thought that maybe counterplay should have been part of the equation? This will be the first thing to go, there's no reason why this was ever a thing. Also, get rid of the whole do more damage to hacked targets thing. It's such a contrived mechanic that just makes hack a worse Zenyatta Discord org. Like, what's the point of having your teammates see your hack target mid-fight if it doesn't help your team to shut down said target after the ability lockout duration anyways? So we've basically gotten rid of everything meaningful that was added to hack for Overwatch 2. In fact, we're also going to reduce the duration of hack down to 1.5 seconds for now, with the understanding going forward that the duration of the ability lock should now match the full duration of hack, which is pretty much a revert. But at 1.5 seconds of ability lockout with no other strings attached, hack would be a pretty underwhelming ability. Yet we can't really go back to how it was in Overwatch 1 at 5 seconds flat, or we'd run into the whole frustrating and unfair issue again. But what if, for every instance of damage dealt to our hacked target, we could extend the duration of hack? The idea is that there has to be an active effort on the part of Sombra to follow up on the hack in order to maintain its efficacy, where she's not just simply glancing in the general direction of, say, Doomfist or Wrecking Ball and then instantly ruining their day. With this iteration, there would be a prerequisite of a high accuracy rate on her primary fire against her targets in order to maintain a high hack uptime. Hack would potentially have a high duration, but one that Sombra has to earn. We do have to talk about counterplay here though, because it's not like your top 500 or GM Sombra players are going to be missing their shots all that much. What if hack targets could also reduce the duration of hack by dealing damage to Sombra herself? This would mean that getting hacked isn't a situation where you just stop playing the game, because there's a very clear indication of what you need to do if you do get hacked, which is shoot the Sombra. Before I move on to the next iteration of hack, let's talk about Sombra's ultimate, EMP, because in the current Overwatch 2 build, Sombra is able to instantly delete 40% of your existing health with it, and why? So in this video, I will propose that EMP will simply function as an AoE version of every iteration of hack, minus the damage. However, for this iteration we've just discussed, I do think it's a good idea to give EMP a minimum hack duration of about, say, 3 seconds to all targets rather than the base 1.5 seconds. Another way we can go about with adjusting hack, and this time without involving her gunplay, is what if hack had a base duration of, say, 8 seconds with the full ability lockout, but is cleansed once Sombra is no longer within the hack range or loses line of sight from her target. Think of it as a single target, single instance ability disabling version of Ramattra's ultimate, and EMP would do the equivalent with multiple targets, minus the infinite duration. The common theme between the two iterations that I've shared thus far is that Sombra's potential to disable enemy abilities should correlate very clearly to her presence in a team fight. If Sombra fails to pin down on her hack target or is constantly pressured into translocating out of combat, her hack uptime should reflect that, and there would be fewer instances of frustrating and unfair moments. Now, I do have one last proposal that kind of pushes the previous iteration even further into a radical setup, divide and conquer sort of ethos. What if we extended the duration of hack all the way to a fixed 20 seconds, while keeping hack on a short cooldown so we can hack multiple targets during this duration? But the ability lockout now only applies within a shortened proximity of, say, 6 meters, although it can now be triggered on either Sombra herself or another hack target. Unlike the previous iteration, this hack debuff will not cleanse itself outside of the ability lock trigger range, and only expires past the full 20 seconds duration, or until a cleanse ability is applied. Because of the shorter range of the ability lock, single target hacks could be less instantly potent because Sombra isn't necessarily in the range to her hack target to disable the abilities from the get-go. While this gives hack targets the agency to bypass the ability lock by simply spacing out against Sombra and from other hack targets, there is value to be had in compromising synergies and positionings. Now, obviously none of the ideas thrown out in this video are flawless and do subject Sombra's entire kit to numerical readjustments, but these are just some examples of just how much more potential there is in the foundations of Sombra's hero identity. If only the developers were willing to explore these avenues. I just wish they did more of said exploration and less obsessing over giving her
More potential damage.
to just really embrace her hero identity as a hacker.